Thank you for browsing page 121. Today we're going to take a look at amber zones. Amber zones. Oh, that sounds ominous. Well, they're not so bad possibly, but they can be your gateway to adventure. My son Pat made me a couple of these a few years ago. So we're going to take a look. Amber zone is defined by the 2022 rules update. Amber zones indicate that travelers should exercise caution when visiting such worlds. The Amber Code may mean that citizens of the world are xenophobic, that the political situation is chaotic, or that some other danger exists within the system. So the amber zone could be for xenophobia. Xenophobia is anybody that's afraid of something that's not of them, their normal environment, not necessarily aliens, but something from elsewhere. So it could be that you have a planet of people that are uncomfortable with people from other planets. Maybe they just don't want to associate with other humans from other planets. Maybe they don't want to deal with races they perceive to be alien, like, say, an Aslan. Maybe there's an Aslan type figure in one of the world religions, and the Aslan themselves remind them too much of it, and that causes them to be a little xenophobic. Another thing could be this political situation, and this is the one I found most commonly. You can have a political situation where you have a charismatic dictator, so somebody that's oppressing his people and has a lot of different rules and laws that you may not be aware of. So you're wandering around the planet and all of a sudden you've run afoul of one of these laws, and now the authorities are after you for whatever reason. And the other thing with the political situation could be unrest. If there's a threat of an imminent nuclear war between the polities on the planet, you can run afoul of that. Now, it's important to note that the Imperium, the Third Imperium, rules the space between the planets. It does not rule the planets themselves. So when you're traveling in charted space, especially within the Third Imperium, the space lanes belong to the Third Imperium. The planet is governed on an individual basis, and each of the peoples on the planets form their own governments and have their own laws and rules and ways to behave and things like that. And that's where amber zones can come in, even when you're dealing with a situation that's really close to home in charted space. So I think that's neat, and I like amber zones because they can be your gateway to adventure. You can have a planet that seems innocuous. It's a shirt sleeve planet where the atmosphere is quite comfortable, the gravity is quite comfortable, everything's wonderful. It's a garden world, except this garden world is ruled by a dictator, and the dictator has clamped down all kinds of laws, and he's held large areas of preserves for himself to hunt and enjoy. Nobody else is allowed there. Your travelers are likely not to know that, or honestly, being who travelers are, not care. And when they don't know or don't care, they can run afoul of the powers that be in the area. So amber zones can be a ton of fun. Now, I should also briefly mention the red zone, as long as we're talking about zones. I did a video on this a few years ago on red zones and amber zones. But the red zone indicates a major danger exists within the system, and those are usually interdicted. In other words, there is a fleet presence, a naval presence there that keeps people off the planet for whatever reason. And a lot of times, Traveler doesn't tell you the reason. You go ahead and you make up that reason, and that's one of the funs of this game. So an amber zone can be a great way to have your players land on the planet at the starport, and the starport, of course, has in the starport confines, it's under Imperial rule. So all the Imperial laws apply. But once your players cross the extrality line and go onto the planet itself, well, that's a different animal entirely. You may find yourself within 10 feet being arrested because you're not wearing purple today. And today is a day of celebration for one of the local rulers, and you're not wearing a purple sash or purple gloves or a purple hat. Therefore, you are subject to arrest because it's a charismatic dictatorship, and you are going to darn well adhere to the rules. That's a great way to get your players in trouble very quickly. The fun thing of amber zones is a lot of times your travelers will have higher tech than the folks on the planet itself. They may be walking around with tech level 12, 13 stuff routinely, but they get to the planet itself, and the planet might top out at maybe tech level 7 or 8. So the travelers are going to feel kind of cocky. They feel they're going to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want, because they've got this great tech. That's true to a point, but not even travelers can fight an entire world, and that's where amber zones come in and are fun. You may have a Gauss pistol and you may have walked into the Amber Zone area, the normal portion of the star town around the starport, and you walk out there with your Gauss pistol, or you smuggle it out more likely. And once you get out there, you decide you're going to wear it openly, and the local authorities don't like it, and travelers being who they are, a lot of times a firefight will break out, and you'll do really well at first, and then numbers will tell. And that's where amber zones can be a lot of fun. And amber zones are not all that exotic or that hard to come by. Just as an example, I have pulled out the sector map for Core Sector. This came with the outstanding Third Imperium book. And in the sector map, in fact, in the Silean Worlds zone, you find yourself with an amber world, or amber code right there. Where the heck is it? Kuir, or Kuir, however you pronounce that, has an amber code. It has a charismatic dictatorship. And it's right there in the Silean zone. The capital is right here. So you are no distance astrographically, and yet here we have an amber zone. And it turns out it's a charismatic dictatorship. If you were to land there and leave the starport, you could find yourself running afoul of laws. Maybe people don't have individual rights. Maybe the laws are rather arbitrary, and the folks that are policing things can just decide they're going to pick you up because they don't like the way you look. A lot of things are very important for players to know before they walk into an unknown area. This can be especially fun when your travelers are traveling outside Imperial space and they land on the downport and they're thinking, oh, it's just like every other starport in the Imperium, is that the Imperium rules the starport. No. Outside the Imperium, the local law rules the starport. You can run afoul of the law just by stepping off your ship with a communication device. Some planets don't allow them. Just by walking out of the ship with it strapped to your wrist, you could be subject to arrest. So there's a lot of different ways that you as the GM can go ahead and build this in and have a lot of fun with it. It's especially fun, as I said, if you're outside the Imperium. I know my players got used to being in the Imperium and knew about the starport and how the starport was ruled by the Third Imperium and all the laws applied. But once they went outside of charted space in District 268, they were expecting that to still pertain, and I was able to surprise them and have it not pertain. They landed in the starport and immediately ran afoul of the authorities. Actually, in this case, the ship landed, and then they found out that there was a $5,000 departure fee, or dollar credit, 5,000 credit departure fee from the starport. They immediately complained and protested and were told that's the local law, deal with it. And they don't tell you about this until you've landed. They basically hold your ship hostage. They decided to blast their way out, and they did, but they ended up having all kinds of alerts on their vessel for that system and a couple of surrounding systems. So they had to kind of make themselves scarce. So that's all I really wanted to say about Amber Zones. They are a lot of fun. They can build a story for you just by existing. Your players will do things that will set them against the local authorities almost always. And have fun with this. Don't just have it be a political dictatorship. Have it be something where the players, maybe there's a civil war going on, and maybe they aren't aware of it, so they step outside the Imperial starport. So if Kuir, for in our example, were to be experiencing a civil war, and the players stepped outside, they might find themselves in a few minutes, within a mile or so, in a firefight between two opposing sides. So there's a lot of ways you can build this into your story, and your players can run into trouble quick. And you don't even need to necessarily plan out the night for that. Just have some combat encounters ready and have some other types of encounters ready as far as dealing with the authorities, dealing with any magistrates or things like that. And that can be a quick and easy 2 to 3 hour session. I've done them. I know that works very well. You can always count on travelers to cause the biggest problem that they're able to cause when they run afoul of local authorities. But there you have it. That's all I've got to say today on page 121. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. Please take a look at the Patreon. Help me out there. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave some comments below. I'm always open to suggestions on videos I can make in the future. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.